Hello and thank you for selecting my video. I've published my video online for you and anybody else who would like to see what it looks like underneath a typical double-decker bus. I would like to share with you my small article about it. My video is made up of videos and photos I've taken underneath a typical double-decker bus to show some of the mechanical components that make them work. During filming, I had to wear full safety gear, including a hard hat and safety boots. It was quite cramped and awkward for me to stay under for long, so I tried to get as much as I could for you. The double-decker bus was over an inspection pit. In this next section, I will show what a Volvo B7 TL double-decker bus looks like. A typical double-decker bus is about 35 foot long, 8 foot wide and about 14.5 foot high. It will typically weigh around 12 tonnes empty and 18 tonnes fully loaded. That's for the twin axle buses. It could carry around 100 passengers. The model of bus I was filming under was a Volvo B7 TL, Wright Gemini bodied city bus. It is a low-floor bus and is powered by a 7-litre diesel engine, which transmits its power through an automatic transmission. Buses are normally constructed in two parts, the chassis and the bodywork, which sits on the chassis. The chassis is the main structure of the vehicle and it holds all the mechanical running gear. In this next clip, I will show the video footage I taken under a Volvo B7 TL double-decker bus, and my voice audio will try and explain what I am filming. I tried to sync these up as best as I could for you as well. Okay, hello all. Right, so what I'm doing here now is I'm doing a voice audio. The original audio for this it's not being used, so I'm just using the voice audio here to try and explain what's going on here. So this is underneath a typical double-decker bus, a city bus. This particular model is the Volvo B7 TL, and it has the Wright Gemini body on it. It's a Volvo B7 TL with Wright Gemini bodywork, and it's a double-decker bus. Now, the photos, the videos here are just going to try and highlight what's being seen. So at this particular moment, if I've synced this up correctly, you should be looking at towards the rear. This is the transfer box, the prop shaft now. That's the coupling, the universal coupling, which is coming out the angular drive on the transmission. The engine on this model of bus sits transversely. It sits at the rear, and the gearbox also is connected to the engine, which also sits transversely, and it needs an angular drive to take the drive from the engine to the rear axle, where the differential gearbox is. Now this particular model has a drop centre rear axle. It's a ZF drop centre rear axle, which will allow for a low floor interior. It's a low floor bus, so I've got a drop centre axle for it. Now it's quite quick. It was difficult to film, so this is the best I could do. It's quite cramped under there. I was limited for time. It's got drum brakes. That's looking at the rear axle. It's got drum brakes on the rear and disc brakes on the front. Now this is the piping work going through the chassis outriggers. That's the stabilisers for the rear axle. That's all the pipes, hoses, hydraulics, because you've got the hydraulic power steering box at the front, and the pump is at the back where the engine drives it via a belt, I think it's a belt. So that's all between the axles, the floor pan, or the wheelbase, there isn't any mechanical running units. all the mechanical running units. So this is now at the front. This is the front sub-assembly mechanical units. The particular model here has an independent front rear axle. So in other words, it doesn't have an axle beam, it's independently, and it's made up of a multi-link suspension setup. That's the disc that you're looking at there. Disc brakes. That's the actuator for the brakes. I'm trying to remember where it was. No, that's looking up towards the power steering box, below the driver cab. So I think you could also make out the brake pedal valves, because that's what the brake pedals, air brakes, and the brake pedal just operates valves that operate the air brakes. The engine drives an air compressor which fills up these air tanks, which also operates the air suspension and the doors, etc. The air brakes, they're the main components that use the pneumatics. I'm trying to remember where I was now. I'm looking at this at the same time and doing a voice audio. I think this is at the front. That's the front structure, the chassis structure. That's the steering, Anchorman steering, I think it is. That's the steering mechanism. So it's coming out of the box there. I think that's looking at the bottom of the steering box, and that's the transfer, the links, trap rod ends, it's going to the wheels, the front wheels. So the steering pulls one wheel and it links to the other wheel and causes the other wheel to steer. And that there's an air tank just on the right there. I think this is going under the platform, the passenger door platform. Now that is the brake actuator on the front wheel disc. It's got disc brakes. That's grease, that red stuff is because it's been lobed. So I think they've re-greased everything up. Yeah, that is going to the other front wheel. That's the brake pipe hose for the air brakes. And you've got the other hose up there for the suspension, the airbag suspension. The suspension can lower on this model. You could raise, you can make the bus kneel and raise the bus as well for a ferry lift. I think I look at towards the front. That's under the front. It's an air tank above there, I think. Yeah, this is looking under the platform. This is looking backwards under the front. This is up to the steering column, the steering box, and I think that's where the brake pedals is. Certainly that's under the driver's cab, if I remember correctly. Yep, and the battery boxes are also there. That actually right at the front is the heater matrix. That's the scriff pan on the right there. In this next section of my main video, I have put together a photo slideshow using photos that I've taken underneath the Volvo B7 TL double-decker city bus. I have also added my voice audio to try and explain what's being seen on the photos. Okay, that was the photograph looking at the stabilisers. This is under the engine block, the sump pan, oil pan. That's the prop shaft from the angular drive to the rear axle. That's an oil cooler, that oval shaped, U-shaped pipes. It's an oil cooler. That's a clearer view of it there. And the axle's right in front of it. That's the exhaust silencer system. Again, the exhaust silencer. It's got heat shield above it. Prop shaft, you can see the stabiliser for the axle, the airbag, angular drive. Again, that's the sump, oil pan. That's looking at the rear, so you can see the airbags, the suspension. That's the underside wheelbase platform. No, that's, sorry, battery box under the cab. That's the front wheel steering trap rod end, and you can see the limiter valve behind that. Independent front suspension at the wheel disc. That's the, oh, I think that's the power steering box. And again, that's something, possibly the power steering box. That's under the cab, power steering box. Wheelbase. You can see the pipes going through the centre of the chassis rails. This is the connection for the chassis to the bodywork. I've tried to take a close up with that. It's the mounting points, or one of them anyway. I think that's a typical panel to airbag. Rear suspension airbag. That's the rear wheel. You can see the brake drum in the centre of the wheel. That's the axle. Anti-roll bar is also there. Again, that's the rear axle. Exhaust system. The gas is going one side and out the same side for the silencer. Angular drive under the engine. Well, say no more, that's me. I have to wear a hard hat and safety PPE. So that's the oil cooler. Again, that's within the wheelbase and the ladders like chassis as well. That's the independent front suspension multi-link. Steering bars in that as well. And steering linkages, steering bar, trapper end. That's the, can't get a view of that. I didn't get a clear view of that, unfortunately. It's under the cab, I think. That's the rear view looking towards the oil cooler axle towards the front. Again, it's a close up of the universal join on the axle from the prop shaft. That's the transfer box from the transmission. It's the angular drive transfer box, which takes the drive from the gearbox, puts it to the angle so that it's giving it a 90-degree drive to the rear axle. Because the engine and transmission sits transversely at the rear. That's the rear silencer. That's the information plate about the axle. It's a 12 ton, I think, limit on that axle, cross limit. I think that's an air dump valve for the, you see the green, that's the antifreeze for the air brake system, I think. I'm not a trained technician, by the way, I just learned this from my hobby. That's the centre wheelbase, all the pipes and everything. I think that's the air dryers, I think. It's to do with the air brakes anyway, and the air system. Because the air works the suspension as well, the doors, and also the driver's seat originally, for the springiness of the seat. Double-decker buses frequently get safety checks and service intervals to keep them on the road for as long as possible during hard, long hours. The inspection pit is an essential item for carrying out those tasks. I hope you enjoyed my short video, and if you wish, you could comment, like, or subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you for watching.